Blizzard Entertainment is one of the most beloved and well-known companies in the gaming industry. Founded in 1991 under the names Silicon and Synapse, their journey began with smaller titles like RPM Racing, The Lost Vikings, and Rock and Roll Racing. In 1994, the company was renamed to Blizzard Entertainment, and with the release of Warcraft, Orcs and Humans that same year, it had begun the shift into the company that we know today. During this time, they created three of the most iconic gaming franchises of all time: Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft. These three franchises would come to define Blizzard as a company, being the only titles that they worked on from 1995 all the way up until 2014. One of them, Diablo, would be the beginning of a very important design element that would become a crucial part of Blizzard's games in the years to come, a design element called RNG. Strictly speaking, RNG stands for Random Number Generator. Many folks who play games will be familiar with the term. In short, RNG is slang for the way that a game is programmed for random chance, the mechanic of luck. In Diablo's case, the RNG came in both the form of random dungeons and a random loot engine that kicked off one of the most prevalent systems in gaming to this day, tier-based random loot. As you play through Diablo, loot drops constantly. Like many games, most of the drops will be garbage that you don't want, but you keep playing because every so often you find that perfect upgrade. Then you play more and get another upgrade. This constant quest for the best loot is the primary feedback loop behind the entire Diablo franchise, and we see something similar in lots of other games. And players loved it. The never-ending journey to become stronger by finding that perfect item was one of the strongest hooks in gaming and really had an impact across a multitude of genres. Random loot systems are so common now that we might take for granted the series that made it so prolific, but it all goes back to Diablo for making it explode in the way that it did. As the 90s and early 2000s rolled on, Blizzard continued to work on their big three franchises. Diablo 2 launched in 2000, and the third Warcraft game arrived in 2003. But during this time, Blizzard was working on something that would change the modern landscape of gaming forever, a combination of the lessons they'd learned and the experience they'd gathered in all their games up to this point. That game is, of course, World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft burst onto the scene in 2004 and quickly became one of the most successful games of the era. Using the setting established in the Warcraft series, World of Warcraft was the perfect recipe for an MMO in a time when the market wasn't completely saturated with them. Starting in 2007, Blizzard has released an expansion for the game every 2 years and shows no signs of slowing down. One big lesson that World of Warcraft took from Diablo is how many players would be motivated by the quest for better gear. By combining that hook with an absolutely massive world, a rich story with tons of NPCs, a bottomless supply of quests and bosses to kill, and the ability to do it all with your friends or your guild, Blizzard perfected the formula for their modern MMO in one deft stroke. World of Warcraft and its expansions would be the last game we saw from Blizzard for the next 6 years, until 2010 when StarCraft 2 came out, and then in 2012, Diablo 3. Blizzard announced the Real Money Auction House, a way for players to take the loot that they had found in the game and put it up for sale to make a real profit. This was one of the first ways that we saw Blizzard move to directly monetize RNG. There were a lot of thoughts on it at the time, but I don't think most people realized just how badly it would ruin the core of the game. It did enable some players to make a legitimate profit, but there was a problem. In previous Diablo games, you picked up loot for your class, so most everything you found would be usable. But this time around, Blizzard had made it so a large portion of the loot that you found was for other classes. This would incentivize the player to put all the gear that they couldn't use onto the auction house, where Blizzard would take a cut. Many players felt that the fundamental drive of Diablo had been completely sabotaged so Blizzard could turn a profit, and they had a point. Fortunately, the Real Money Auction House didn't last, and Blizzard announced in September of the following year that it would be removed from the game, admitting that it had undermined the core gameplay of killing monsters to get loot. One Reaper of Souls expansion and some radical overhauls to the loot system later, and the sinking SS Diablo 3 had been righted, and to this day remains a popular and successful game with a devoted following. But there was a lesson to be learned here. Maybe they shouldn't monetize RNG in their existing games, but what if they did it in new ones? For the first time in nearly 20 years, Blizzard revealed a new IP, Hearthstone, a free-to-play trading card game based on World of Warcraft lore. From alpha to beta to final release, Hearthstone has been a tremendous success, and it was powered by the ever-present Blizzard-style RNG. Hearthstone is all about getting new cards to make new decks, and like any good trading card game, you get new cards in random packs that can be earned either by play or through real money purchases. Available on both mobile devices and computers, Hearthstone had both the accessibility to attract casual players and the depth to foster a hardcore community. And even though you don't need to spend lots of money to get a competitive deck in Hearthstone, just the act of opening packs to get that one card you're after translated to a huge profit. In 2016, Hearthstone alone made almost $400 million. By this point, Blizzard knew it was onto something. Hearthstone had proven that even if people don't need to buy random packs of unlocks, they will. They think it's fun. Players would be enticed in the same way that they were when they played hours of Diablo or World of Warcraft to get that perfect piece of gear, and they were willing to lay down good money on it. In 2015, Blizzard released Heroes of the Storm and entered the modern MOBA arena. Heroes of the Storm was free to play and had a pretty wide breadth of unlockables. Aside from gameplay elements like playable heroes that could be purchased with real money, Heroes of the Storm also had tons of cosmetic unlocks that could only be found in loot boxes, which distributed rewards randomly. You could earn these boxes as you leveled up, or buy them directly with real money. They had a chance to drop shards, a currency that could be used to craft specific items, and you'd automatically get some if you happened to get a duplicate item in one of the boxes. But since it was all random chance, there was no way of telling how many boxes you would need to buy in order to get what you wanted. And this RNG-based model must have been a success for Blizzard, because something similar ended up being used in their next game. A game that would set in motion an absolute explosion of the loot box craze across every corner of the medium. Overwatch! Released in May of 2016, it was a team-based, class-based competitive shooter. It was the perfect storm. It featured a diverse roster of likable characters with great designs, a good selection of maps, and solid gameplay. Like other Blizzard games, it appealed to both casual and serious players. It also launched for only $40 on the PC, making it an attractive offer straight out of the gate. Unlike Heroes of the Storm, you didn't have to buy any heroes, and all future content would be totally free for everybody. The entire post-launch revenue stream of Overwatch would depend solely on whether or not people would be willing to spend money on random packs of unlocks. Unlike other games, there was no way to trade real money for currency to purchase the items that you wanted. There was an in-game currency, but it was only acquired randomly through loot boxes. There were two ways to earn boxes. You get one loot box every time you level up, or you can purchase them in bulk for real money. That was it. Instead of spending a few bucks to get an item that you liked, purchasing loot boxes was more of a gamble. Very few people would be willing to spend $50 on a skin for their favorite character, but it seemed like many people were willing to spend that much on a pack of boxes, which gave them a chance to get what they wanted. You never knew what you were going to get, or how many boxes it would take to get it. With lucky drops, you could get that legendary skin or the currency to buy it almost straight away. With unlucky drops, not so much. Anecdotally, I can share that in the early days of the game, I once went over 70 loot boxes without getting enough currency to buy the legendary skin that I wanted at the time. Shortly after I finally got enough, I got 2 legendary gold drops back to back, enough to purchase 1 legendary skin in only 2 boxes. Really bad luck, followed by really good luck. On top of the loot box system, Overwatch also started doing seasonal events, where limited time items could be unlocked for 3 times as much currency as regular items. Not only do you have a limited time to unlock the items you want, they also take much more investment. A normal legendary skin is 1,000 Overwatch bucks, but a seasonal one sits at a hefty 3,000, a sum of credits that many players feel isn't feasible to gather before the event is over without spending real money on loot boxes, short of grinding for hours every day. This, of course, drives many players to spend real-life money on loot boxes in the hopes that they get the items they need before the event ends. Now, of course, before you say anything, loot boxes and their unlocks are not necessary whatsoever to enjoy Overwatch, but Overwatch's unlockables have proven to be one of the most powerful hooks to keep people playing that we've seen in modern gaming. People go absolutely nuts over getting that one perfect skin for their favorite character. At the beginning of every event, checklists are passed around by the community so players can keep track of the items they've gotten and the ones they still need. I'm not big into cosmetics myself, but I understand the appeal, and it's undeniable just how many people will jump through hoops to get what they're after. And it works. In its first year, Overwatch made over $1 billion, a large portion of which can be traced back to the success of its loot box system. Activision made over $7 billion in 2017, $2 billion of which came only from microtransactions. Under the RNG only model that Overwatch uses, there's no way to estimate how long it will take to unlock something, no way to track progress or make headway. You just have to keep playing or spending until you get lucky enough to get what you want, instead of having a clear goal of the investment required to get something. Maybe you'll get it in only 5 boxes, but maybe it'll take 50. There's no way to tell. Blizzard definitely didn't invent this model. We saw it in lots of mobile games long before. Team Fortress 2 had a key and box system many years prior, but after the ridiculous success of Overwatch, we saw an explosion of loot boxes being shoehorned into all different kinds of games in the year 2017. The blood was in the water, and publishers knew that the slot machine model could be profitable beyond what anybody ever expected. Shadow of War, Call of Duty, Forza, Battlefront 2, Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, the list of games adopting the loot box model goes on and on and on. It's becoming so prevalent that governments around the world are looking into the issue, and everyone has different ideas on it. The loot box frenzy shows absolutely no signs of slowing down anytime soon, and I think it's something that we can expect to see in many games for years to come. But the concept of the slot machine doesn't end at loot boxes. Blizzard seems to be constantly increasing the amount of RNG that we see in all their games, and it's beginning to reach a boiling point. World of Warcraft has recently come under a lot of fire from its community over what they feel to be an excess of RNG being injected into the game. I'm not a WoW head, so I can't comment too much from personal experience, but I can tell you that I'm seeing a lot of the same complaints throughout the community and from friends who play the game. When pressed about this at BlizzCon 2018, Blizzard directly said that they don't think linear progression is fun, but admitted that they also relied too much on RNG.
Why is there so much RNG in the game, and do you have plans to, I guess, sort of move away from that, where the time that we spend, we know we're working towards something and we can actually get that thing?
I think our concern with something that's just completely deterministic, where things are on a vendor, is a point where you can just actually mark the date on the calendar, where it's like, all right, 13 days from now, I'm going to get this, and then 10 days later, I'm going to get the second piece, and 5 days after that, I'll get this. And there's no excitement or reward along the way. It's just steady progress towards a goal. That's not, I think, the world we want to live in its entirety. The flip side, obviously, is one where nothing feels predictable, nothing feels certain. That's a problem also.
Recently, Asmongold, a well-known World of Warcraft content creator, released a lengthy video criticizing the current direction of the game, and it became one of the most upvoted threads ever on the WoW subreddit, earning 32 Reddit gold. It prompted a response from the developers, who explained some planned changes. But even their solution involves earning currency to buy random boxes every 2 to 3 weeks, with specific purchases being available as long-term goals. The community seems to think it's a step in the right direction, but I question how much frustration this will alleviate in the end. And I would be remiss not to mention the recent controversy surrounding Diablo Immortal. To make a long story short, they announced a mobile game in the Diablo franchise, and fans are less than happy.
Just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
My biggest thought on this is if Blizzard is able to use the slot machine model for both gameplay and monetization in their mainline franchises, I cannot imagine what type of revenue stream they have planned for a free-to-play mobile game, a genre infamous for microtransactions that border on gambling. Time will tell, but I'm not holding my breath. Blizzard's mark on how random chance is used in games is undeniable. But beyond gameplay mechanics, they've completely revolutionized how random chance can be used as a model for monetizing their games. From the humble beginnings of Diablo's random loot all the way to Overwatch's loot boxes, RNG has always been a core part of Blizzard's identity as a company. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is ultimately up to you. At any rate, Blizzard's influence over the gaming industry is very real. Like it or not, they're a company that sets trends with each and every success. RNG has been a fundamental part of their design for decades, and I don't think that's always a bad thing. But I do worry about the implications of that success sometimes, as they seem to move away from using random chance to create exciting and unexpected results and towards the slot machine. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope you'll subscribe if you found the video interesting or enjoyable. I also want to mention that I recently started a Patreon account, so feel free to check that out if you want to support the channel. Thanks again for sticking around until the end. Until next time.